There often comes a moment in life, a quiet, subtle turning point, when the noise of the world begins to fade, and you're left staring into the mirror, wondering whose life you've been living. Perhaps it's during a long walk, a restless night, or an unexpected heartbreak. The realization can be soft like a whisper or jarring like a thunderclap. This isn't me. You look around at the life you've built, the job, the relationships, the habits, the dreams, and for the first time, you wonder if any of it was truly yours. Most of us grow up learning how to fit in, not how to stand out. We're taught to be liked, to be approved of, to play our part in families, cultures, systems. We learn early what pleases others and what gets disapproval. We shape ourselves accordingly, not even knowing that we're slipping into costumes made for survival, not selfhood. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist and founder of analytical psychology, spoke deeply about this disconnect between the authentic self and the version of us that the world sees. He called this outer mask the persona, a socially acceptable identity we craft to interact with society. The persona is not inherently bad. It's a necessary tool. But problems arise when we confuse the persona with the self. In Jung's view, true psychological growth begins the moment we ask, who am I beyond the roles I play? Choosing yourself above all else is not about selfishness. It's about truth. It's about peeling back layers of inherited expectations and asking what is real. It's about stepping off the treadmill of performance and asking what your soul actually longs for. It's about pausing the pursuit of being good enough and starting the journey toward being whole. But this choice, to prioritize the self, to turn inward, to become, doesn't come without fear. Most of us avoid it for years. Why? Because the path back to the self is wild and uncharted. Because it often requires dismantling everything you've built on foundations that weren't truly yours. Because it challenges every story you've been told about who you should be. Choosing yourself can look like failure to those still trapped in personas. It can look like rebellion, like irresponsibility, like loss. But in truth, it is the beginning of freedom. There's a kind of quiet power that begins to rise in a person when they make that choice. When they stop betraying themselves for approval, for comfort, for belonging. This power isn't loud or flashy. It's not ego-driven. It's a grounded, sacred sort of knowing. I am allowed to exist as I am. I am enough. Not because I perform, but because I am. Jung believed that the most important task of a human being is to become whole, not perfect. To him, wholeness meant embracing all parts of the self, the light and the shadow, the rational and the wild, the socially acceptable and the deeply personal. This process of becoming whole is what he called individuation. It's a lifelong journey of integrating the fragmented pieces of who we are into a coherent, authentic identity. Individuation is not a comfortable process. It involves a stripping away, a death of illusions, personas, and ego identities. But in that stripping away, we begin to see the outlines of something real, something that has been with us all along, quietly waiting beneath the surface. That is the true self, the part of you that knows what brings you peace, what makes your heart beat faster, what feels like home. In this light, choosing yourself is an act of radical courage. It's a turning away from noise and turning toward depth. It's stepping into the unknown with nothing but your inner compass. It's saying, I would rather disappoint others than betray myself. It's saying, I am no longer available for a life that numbs me or shrinks me. It's not a midlife crisis. It's a soul's awakening. And the beauty of it? Once you take that step, once you decide to come home to yourself, life begins to shift in mysterious ways. You start attracting people who see you, not your mask. You begin to find meaning in places you never looked. You feel peace not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer at war with yourself. So, this is what happens when you finally choose yourself above all else. You begin to live. From a very young age, we learn that in order to be accepted, we must adapt. We pick up subtle, and not so subtle cues from our parents, teachers, and society about what behaviors are acceptable and which ones are not. We learn how to act to gain approval, how to speak to avoid criticism, how to behave to feel safe. This is how the persona is born. Carl Jung described the persona as a kind of psychological mask, a social identity crafted for the sake of interacting with the world. It's the version of you that shows up at work, at family dinners, at school, on social media. It's who you become to function and survive in a society with expectations and rules. The persona isn't fake. It's strategic. It's not evil. It's necessary. But it becomes dangerous when you forget that it's not you. The trouble starts when the persona becomes so entrenched that the real self, the one beneath the surface, gets lost. We begin to over-identify with the roles we play. We say, I'm a good daughter, a responsible employee, a loyal friend, a people pleaser, a perfectionist. And in time, those become more than labels. They become our identity. We perform, we contort, we please, we achieve. All the while, a deeper part of us, the unfiltered, raw, intuitive self, is buried beneath performance. Jung warned of the dangers of this over-identification. He wrote, "The persona is a complicated system of relations between the individual consciousness and society. But it is still a mask, a semblance. When you believe that the mask is your face, you cut yourself off from your deeper truth. You lose access to your instincts, your creativity, your wildness, your desires. You stop living from the inside out and start living from the outside in. The real self, the true self, is who you are when no one's watching. It's the you that existed before you were told who to be. It's the version of you that whispers through dreams, intuition, and longing. It's the part that doesn't care about approval, achievement, or appearances. It only cares about truth. Reconnecting with that true self can feel terrifying. After all, the persona has kept you safe. It got you through difficult childhoods, rigid systems, toxic relationships. It helped you belong. So letting go of it feels like risking exile. That's why most people don't do it. Why they live and die as a collection of expectations rather than as an authentic soul. But here's what's real. When you choose yourself, you must be willing to dismantle the persona. That doesn't mean you walk into your boss's office tomorrow and quit your job, or abandon your family, or become reckless with your life. It means you start getting honest. Honest about what feels true and what doesn't. Honest about where you're performing and where you're present. Honest about the masks you wear and what it's costing you to keep them on. You start to ask questions like, do I actually enjoy this? Or am I doing it to be liked? Is this who I am or who I was told to be? What would I choose if I wasn't afraid of judgment? And when the answers come, softly, slowly, painfully, you listen. You may discover that you've been living someone else's dream, that your job, your lifestyle, your relationships were never truly aligned with your values, that your silence was a survival mechanism, that your ambition was a cry for love, that your niceness was fear wearing a smile. This kind of self-reckoning is not for the faint of heart. It shakes the foundation. It can leave you disoriented, lonely, vulnerable. But Jung would tell you, this is where the real work begins. This is the call to individuation, the sacred journey of shedding the mask and reclaiming the soul. Choosing yourself above all else means you begin to live in alignment with your inner truth, not outer pressure. It means you let go of being the ideal version of yourself and start being the honest one. It means you accept that not everyone will like the real you, and you begin to realize that was never the point. When you drop the persona and meet your true self, something remarkable happens. You begin to feel less exhausted. You no longer have to perform or prove. You begin to speak from your heart, not from a script. You feel peace, not because life is easier, but because you're finally telling the truth. You may lose some people, but you'll find your people. You may lose some opportunities, but you'll gain your purpose. You may lose the version of yourself that was always fine, nice, successful. But in its place, you'll find someone real. This is what happens when you finally choose yourself. The mask falls, and the soul rises. There is a part of you that you have spent your entire life trying not to see. It hides in the edges of your thoughts, in the judgments you project onto others, in the emotions that surge out of nowhere, and in the moments when your carefully managed identity begins to crack. This part of you is what Carl Jung called the shadow. Everything you deny, repress, or disown about yourself. To choose yourself above all else is to commit to meeting that shadow, to walking toward the parts of you that you've been taught to fear, hate, or ignore. And that journey is nothing short of revolutionary. The shadow is not just the bad parts of you. It's the entirety of what your ego has exiled. That includes anger, jealousy, selfishness, laziness, shame, but also power, sensuality, creativity, joy, and boldness. Yes, your light can be part of your shadow too, if you've been taught that shining is dangerous. For example, a woman who was raised to be quiet and agreeable might repress her assertiveness and independence, which then become part of her shadow. A man taught that vulnerability is weakness might bury his tenderness and emotional intelligence. A child who was shamed for being loud or imaginative might grow into an adult who suppresses their voice and creativity. These disowned parts don't disappear. They don't politely wait for you to acknowledge them. Instead, they erupt through projection, outbursts, depression, anxiety, people-pleasing, or even addiction. Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's the core of shadow work, bringing into awareness what has lived in the dark. When you finally choose yourself, you must be willing to meet your shadow, to face your own judgments, your repressed rage, your unmet grief, your hidden desires. You must look at yourself not through the lens of who you should be, but through the honest, unfiltered lens of who you are. This is not comfortable work. It can feel like breaking your own heart. Because the shadow isn't just what you hate. It's what you've had to give up in order to be loved. And reclaiming it means grieving. Grieving the years you lived small. Grieving the truth you silenced. Grieving the parts of you that no one held space for. But here's the paradox. The shadow, once faced, becomes power. That hidden anger? It becomes fuel for boundaries. That old shame? It becomes a portal to compassion. That buried desire? It becomes your direction. That part of you that always felt too much. It becomes your magic. When you integrate your shadow, you become whole. You stop outsourcing your worth. You stop judging others for traits you haven't accepted in yourself. You stop living on emotional autopilot. You begin to respond rather than react. You become a person who walks into life with both hands open. Not perfect, but present. Jung didn't believe in the elimination of the shadow. He knew it wasn't about erasing it, but about integrating it, acknowledging it, owning it, making it part of your conscious identity. He believed that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. And this pain, the discomfort of facing your own darkness, is the price of authenticity. But there is a strange kind of liberation that arises when you stop hiding from yourself. You no longer live in fear of being found out. You no longer have to pretend. You no longer need the approval of others to feel okay. When you choose yourself, even the messy, chaotic, imperfect parts, you stop needing to prove your goodness. You already know your worth. This is the moment when true self-respect is born. You can stand in your truth, even when it's inconvenient. You can say no without guilt. You can say yes without fear. You can be disliked and not crumble. You can fail and not spiral. You can speak, scream, cry, dance, rage, rest, because all of you is allowed now. This is the gift of shadow work. And this is what happens when you finally choose yourself above all else. You stop rejecting the parts of you that were never broken, just buried. The shadow, once met with honesty and compassion, becomes your teacher. And when you integrate that teacher into your life, you walk through the world not as a fractured identity trying to be enough, but as a whole human being who already is. We like to believe that our thoughts, desires, and choices are entirely our own. That we are free, independent, rational beings, making decisions based solely on personal conviction. But Carl Jung challenges this comforting illusion with the concept of the collective unconscious, a vast shared reservoir of memories, instincts, archetypes, and patterns that all human beings inherit simply by being born. The collective unconscious is not something we are consciously aware of, yet it influences us profoundly. It whispers through culture, traditions, religions, myths, and even family expectations. It shapes what we consider normal, successful, beautiful, moral, desirable. It tells us what dreams are worth pursuing and which ones are foolish. It dictates the rites of passage we should follow. Go to school, get a stable job, marry, have children, climb ladders, seek security, and if you do all this correctly, then, maybe, you'll find happiness. But what if those whispers were never aligned with your soul? What if the life that feels safest, most accepted, most celebrated by the collective is completely wrong for who you truly are? Choosing yourself above all else often means beginning to question these invisible scripts. It means recognizing that much of what you desire might have been implanted in you by forces outside your conscious awareness. It requires the terrifying audacity to ask, is this dream really mine? Most people never ask that question. The inertia of the collective is powerful. It pulls you into its current without resistance. To swim against it, to carve an individual path, is one of the rarest and bravest acts a person can undertake. The journey of individuation demands that you leave the collective dream and listen to the personal calling of your soul. It means risking alienation. It means standing alone sometimes. It means walking away from applause, approval, and familiar comforts. It means trusting a voice inside you that no one else can hear. Jung wrote, "The greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown." To outgrow the collective unconscious is to step into consciousness. It is to refuse to live a second-hand life. But make no mistake, this process can be deeply painful. You might wake up one morning and realize that the career you've sacrificed so much for leaves you empty. You might recognize that your marriage, admired by others, feels like a gilded cage. You might see that your relentless ambition is not a sign of passion but of profound emptiness. You might understand that the dreams you've been chasing were never your own. This realization can feel like a betrayal of your family, your culture, your former self. Guilt, grief, fear, and even rage can arise. There will be moments when you wonder if it would be easier to fall back asleep, to numb yourself with busyness, distractions, and other people's expectations. But you cannot unsee what has been seen. Once you hear the call of your true self, the collective dream will never satisfy you again. You will crave authenticity, the way a drowning person craves air. Choosing your individual path over the collective unconscious does not mean rejecting society entirely. It means consciously choosing which parts of it align with your soul, and which parts must be left behind. It's the difference between living by default and living by design. Jung warned that individuation could appear as selfishness or rebellion to those still enmeshed in the collective. But he also made it clear, the highest contribution you can make to humanity is to become fully yourself. A society made of individuals who are whole, conscious, and alive is infinitely healthier than one made of obedient, fragmented selves. In becoming yourself, you give others permission to do the same. You show that it is possible to live a life rooted in truth, rather than in performance. You demonstrate that courage is contagious. You remind others that freedom exists, not out there, in status or wealth or recognition, but within, in the choice to be who you truly are. The collective unconscious is ancient and deep. It is not easily questioned. It is not easily left. But every person who has ever sparked change, every artist, innovator, healer, revolutionary, has had to swim against that current. They have had to risk being misunderstood, mocked, feared, or even hated. And yet they chose themselves. They chose their calling over comfort, their inner voice over outer applause. When you choose yourself above all else, you are not rejecting the world. You are offering it the only gift worth giving, your authentic, awake, fully alive presence. And in doing so, you slowly shift the collective itself. Because the collective unconscious is not fixed. It evolves as we evolve. Every time a person dares to live from the heart, dares to speak a new truth, dares to break an old pattern, the whole world moves a little closer to consciousness. This is what happens when you finally choose yourself. You become a quiet revolution. Choosing yourself above all else is not a single act. It's a lifelong pilgrimage, an unfolding process that Carl Jung called individuation, the journey toward becoming the whole, authentic version of yourself. Individuation is not about becoming better in the way society often measures improvement. It's not about achieving success, gathering accolades, or perfecting yourself. It's about becoming real. It's about integrating every part of you, the light and the dark, the strengths and the wounds, the known and the unknown, into a cohesive, conscious, and sovereign being. It is, quite literally, the journey of becoming who you were always meant to be. Jung described individuation as a process of differentiation from the collective norms and the unconscious patterns that govern so much of human behavior. It involves stripping away the masks, facing the shadow, questioning inherited beliefs, and listening to the deeper voice of the self, the true center of your being. In the early stages, individuation often feels like destruction. You must dismantle what is false before you can reveal what is true. Careers might fall apart. Relationships might end. Old ambitions might lose their grip. There is grief in this. Deep, aching grief for the life you thought you wanted, the person you pretended to be. But in the rubble of that false life, something astonishing begins to emerge. Yourself. The self is not a goal to reach. It is the living, breathing, dynamic center of your existence. It holds your deepest wisdom, your unique gifts, your personal myth. It is the part of you that has always been whole, even when you felt broken. Individuation is the process of remembering it, reclaiming it, reuniting with it. This journey is marked by powerful symbols and archetypes. The hero who leaves the familiar to seek truth. The wanderer who ventures into the unknown. The alchemist who transforms base materials into gold. These myths are not just stories. They are blueprints of the soul's evolution. They are inner maps guiding you through the stages of awakening. Individuation is not linear. It's cyclical, spiraling through phases of death and rebirth, confusion and clarity, contraction and expansion. Some seasons will feel like darkness, like you are losing yourself. But paradoxically, losing the false self is the only way to find the true one. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And yet, so few claim this privilege. Why? Because it requires immense courage. It demands that you sit with uncertainty, that you feel your pain without numbing it, that you face your fear without being ruled by it. It asks you to become fiercely honest with yourself. What am I pretending not to know? Where am I betraying my own heart? What parts of me am I still exiling because they don't fit who I think I should be? There are no shortcuts, no quick fixes, no easy answers. Individuation is not a weekend workshop or a trendy hashtag. It is a daily, gritty commitment to walk toward yourself even when every voice around you says it's safer to stay asleep. But as you walk, something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel alive. Not the surface-level stimulation that comes from achievements or external validation, but a deep, pulsing, soul-saturated vitality. You begin to experience life not as a performance, but as a sacred adventure. Your relationships deepen, because they are no longer based on roles or masks but on genuine connection. Your work becomes meaningful, because it flows from your essence rather than from societal expectation. Your presence itself becomes healing, to yourself and to others. Individuation teaches you that wholeness is not perfection. You will still have flaws, wounds, fears, and shadows. But you will also have a profound peace, a rootedness that no external circumstance can take away. You will know who you are, and that knowing will be enough. You will no longer need to dominate, to shrink, to perform, to prove. You will simply be. And in your being, you will radiate a quiet power that changes everything. One of Jung's great insights was that individuation serves not just the individual, but the collective. A person who has faced their shadow, integrated their opposites, and connected with their true self becomes a beacon. They disrupt unconscious patterns in their families, communities, and cultures. They model a new way of being. They remind others, not through preaching, but through presence, that a different life is possible. Choosing yourself above all else is not selfish. It is sacred. Because the more fully you become yourself, the more fully you can love, create, lead, and heal. You stop offering the world a hollow version of you, and start offering something real, something needed. This is the essence of individuation. Not escape, but embodiment. Not transcendence, but transformation. Not perfection, but presence. And so, the invitation stands. Step off the well-trodden path. Walk into the wilderness of your own soul. Become who you already are. This is what happens when you finally choose yourself above all else. You come home, not to a place, but to yourself. Freedom sounds like a dream. The idea of living life on your own terms, answering only to your deepest truth, is intoxicating. It's the fantasy of liberation we see in movies, read in poems, long for in silent moments. But Carl Jung knew what many fail to realize. True freedom comes at a price, and that price is responsibility. When you choose yourself above all else, you claim not only your autonomy, but also your accountability. You no longer have the comfort of blaming society, parents, partners, circumstances, or fate for your unhappiness. You can no longer hide behind excuses. You are responsible for your life, all of it. This is both terrifying and exhilarating, because with great freedom comes the weight of choice. Every day, you must decide who you will be. Every day, you must choose whether to act from fear or from love. Every day, you must face the consequences of your actions without retreating into victimhood. Jung understood that the human psyche often resists freedom because of this burden. It's easier, so much easier, to conform, to follow the crowd, to live according to scripts handed down by others. It relieves you of the agony of choice and the risk of failure. It allows you to say, I had no other option. But when you choose yourself, you relinquish that escape hatch. You say, I choose my path, even when it's hard, even when it costs me. You accept that being true to yourself might mean disappointing others, breaking traditions, defying expectations. You accept that your fulfillment might provoke envy, anger, or rejection from those still trapped in collective illusions. Choosing yourself demands that you grow up, not just chronologically, but spiritually. It demands that you become the author of your life story, rather than a passive character in someone else's narrative. And yet, despite its cost, there is no deeper joy than this kind of freedom. When you live from your own center, you move through life with a different kind of peace. Not the peace that comes from avoiding conflict or pleasing everyone, but the peace that comes from alignment. You know who you are. You know what matters to you. You are no longer at war with yourself. This self-possession changes everything. You no longer chase relationships to fill a void, because you are no longer empty. You no longer seek validation from achievements, because you already know your worth. You no longer betray your values for acceptance, because you value your own integrity above all. Freedom is not just about doing whatever you want. Freedom is about choosing who you want to be, again and again, with conscious intention. It's about recognizing that every decision shapes you. It's about living in such a way that, at the end of your life, you can say, I was true to myself. But here's the paradox. The more deeply you choose yourself, the more deeply you can connect with others. When you are no longer performing, you create real intimacy. When you no longer need approval, you can love freely. When you no longer fear rejection, you can stand with open hands and open heart. Freedom, rooted in responsibility, makes you capable of real love, the kind that honors both yourself and the other, without clinging or controlling. It also makes you capable of real service. When you are not driven by unconscious wounds or societal scripts, your work becomes an authentic expression of your gifts. You contribute not from obligation or ego, but from joy and purpose. You recognize that your individual fulfillment enhances the collective good. But none of it, comes without sacrifice. Choosing yourself means giving up the illusion of certainty. It means living without guarantees. It means risking failure, loneliness, heartbreak. It means walking into the unknown without a map. It means losing the old comforts, the false security of belonging to a herd, the temporary highs of external validation, the easy anesthesia of unconsciousness. It means choosing meaning over comfort, truth over approval, growth over safety. This is the hidden cost of freedom, and the reason why so few ever claim it. But if you are willing to pay that price, the reward is beyond imagining. You will taste a life that is yours and yours alone. You will walk the earth not as a hollow imitation, but as a living flame. You will look in the mirror and recognize the face staring back, not as an idea, not as a role, but as a soul. You will die knowing that you lived, really lived. Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Choosing yourself above all else is the ultimate awakening. It is the act of becoming, fully, fiercely, unapologetically, yourself. And once you have tasted that kind of freedom, you will never, ever settle for anything less again.